Hello and welcome. I'm Shraddha Babla and you're watching What Did You Miss on Bloomberg Quint Live. Let's go straight to the headlines. The Monetary Policy Committee maintains the status quo on interest rates. A rate hike in FY19 is now a real possibility as the committee warns of higher inflationary risks going forward. And the Sensex Nifty both slipped in late trade to register their 7th consecutive down day. And in a setback for Anil Agarwal's Vedanta, 88 iron ore mining leases in Goa are squashed. The Supreme Court orders the state to grant fresh leases through new auctions. While Prime Minister Modi tears into the opposition in the Lok Sabha, accuses the UPA government for the NPA mess, says the Congress policies put pressure on banks to lend to crony capitalists. And electric vehicles steal the show at day one of the Auto Expo in New Delhi. Tata Motors, Maruti Suzuki, Hyundai, Hero Moto, TVS all flaunt their clean fuel offerings. Well, in the most important event of the day, the Monetary Policy Committee has kept interest rates unchanged while maintaining a neutral stance on the economy. 5 of the 6 MPC members voted for a status quo on the rates. The committee, however, has raised the red flag on inflation, highlighting 6 key risks. The stance also indicating that a rate hike in the next fiscal cannot be ruled out.
We also need to be mindful that even as the fiscal deficit has stayed above 3%, inflation has come down to some extent because the fiscal stance starting from 2014 has actually been on a downward trajectory. Secondly, the monetary policy itself has become much more flexible in terms of responding to the inflation risks. So it is not necessary that a 3% target should be achievable by the time that the report said. The report was written in 2014. However, having a fiscal stance that is conducive to achieving the 4% target is important, and significant and postponed deviations from them would make matters more challenging going forward. The MPC expects GVA growth to pick up from 6.6% in 2017-18 to 7.2% in 2018-19, with the GST stabilizing and a conducive environment for a revival in investment activity created by improving credit offtake, large resource mobilization from the primary capital market, and improving capital goods production and imports. The MPC was also of the view that the process of recapitalization of public sector banks and the referencing of large distressed borrowers for resolution under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code should improve credit flows further and create demand for fresh investment as allocative efficiency in the economy goes up. Alongside, export growth is expected to improve further on account of improving global demand.
And we have Ira Duggal who's standing by to sum up all the highlights from the RBI's policy decision in this report.
The Monetary Policy Committee left interest rates unchanged at 6%. The committee voted 5-1 in favor of a status quo on interest rates. Michael Patra, Executive Director of the RBI, voted for a rate hike. That's the first vote for a rate hike that we have seen in this cycle. The headlines, though, came not from the decision, but from the policy statement and the press conference after that. Important comments on inflation. Even though the MPC has maintained a neutral stance in its statement, they've highlighted 6 upside risks to inflation. Among them, the impact of HRA, that's house rent and allowance increases, which is already playing out through the system, the impact of stronger global growth and consequently higher commodity prices. Then, of course, the budget impacts start to come in. So on number 3, they talk about the fact that the proposed MSP policy could have an inflationary impact, but they said they need to watch how that plays out. They also said that the hike of customs duty on a number of items could have some inflationary bearing. And then finally, they say that the fiscal slippage as indicated by the union budget could could impinge on the inflation outlook. Fairly strong statement, not just in the policy, but from Governor Urjit Patel in the press conference on the government's fiscal path. He said that there has been a slippage on the fiscal consolidation path on 3 fronts. You missed the fiscal deficit target for last year, that's the current year, that's FY18. You're doing a fiscal deficit of 3.3%, which is higher than what was anticipated for FY19, and you have pushed back the 3% fiscal deficit target all the way to FY21. When asked whether he thinks this will have a bearing on the MPC's ability to meet its 4% inflation target, he sort of balanced out his answer, saying it certainly makes their task a little bit more challenging, but he said that perhaps that 3% number may have changed between 2014 when it was first talked about as a precondition to now. So that's the inflation and fiscal story that came through. Apart from that, on growth, the MPC is sounding relatively comfortable that things are shaping up as expected. So they talk about growth picking up to 7.2% GVA growth in the next fiscal, that's FY19. They say that there is some signs of a pickup that is emerging on the investment side, and you can judge that from stronger credit growth, but also better order books of capital goods companies. They also continue to believe that the recapitalization of banks and the insolvency process will aid growth once it's sorted out. A little bit of a googly coming in from the governor at the press conference, where he talked about the taxes that are being imposed on capital and capital raising, perhaps hinting at the long-term capital gains that has been added to those taxes, saying that that could have a bearing on the investment to GDP rate and could perhaps impact a pickup in that investment to GDP rate. So interesting comment coming in there as well. On liquidity, which was the prime focus of the markets, again, important comment coming in from Viral Acharya, this time the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, saying that the RBI's idea behind liquidity management is to manage the needs of the economy. And the RBI's goal, except in exceptional circumstances, is not to manage asset prices in any one asset market. He was, of course, talking about the bond markets, where yields have gone up, partly because of concerns on inflation, global yields going up, but also fiscal pressures which have hit the market. So the undertone of that message perhaps was that we are not the problem that has pushed up yields. The problem lies elsewhere. In particular, perhaps one part of the problem lies in New Delhi, and that the RBI should not be expected to manage it, because as things stand at a system level, liquidity is still surplus, moving towards neutral.
Deputy Governor Viral Acharya said that RBI's liquidity operations are driven by its monetary policy objectives. Acharya said that it is not RBI's goal to manage the asset markets.
Except in rare, extraordinary, economy-wide circumstances, the goal of RBI's liquidity operations is not to manage directly the prices of any particular long-term asset market. In the present circumstances, economic analysis, including from some of you, has been referring to froth chasing one asset market and there being tight liquidity in another. The resulting asset price and yield implications are therefore unlikely driven by aggregate liquidity conditions, which, as I mentioned, remain in somewhat surplus mode.
Sajid Chinoy, the chief India economist at JP Morgan, says that the RBI believes that inflation is not a cause for alarm as yet. However, he says that RBI could opt for monetary tightening later this year if the variables impacting inflation moves in a certain way.
What the RBI is saying is we see inflation around 4.5 or 4.6%. That is not a cause for alarm, which is why they've kept their stance neutral. Now, remember, this is an inflation targeting central bank. So ultimately what matters is where do they see inflation going? Everything else, the currency, the fiscal deficit, minimum support prices, these are all ingredients. So as of now, I think the central bank doesn't seem alarmed, but I would say 2 or 3 key sources of uncertainty which could push that second half inflation higher if oil prices stay close to 70, if the rupee were to weaken, and if minimum support prices went up. I think right now the RBI is saying is we can't be making policy based on that uncertainty. If these variables move in a way that the second half inflation forecast were to go consistently above 5%, then one cannot rule out monetary tightening later in the year. As of now, they're saying is that's not our baseline view, and so it's not a given that interest rates have to go up anytime soon.
And on the back of this policy, Indian markets have posted losses for the 7th day in a row after RBI's hawkish tone. Both the Sensex and Nifty posted marginal losses. ONGC was the top gainer, while Bharti Airtel incurred sharp cuts. Cipla's third quarter profit, however, missed estimates as its depreciation costs doubled. Now, net profit rose 6.9% on a year-on-year basis to 400 crores, while the revenue rose 11% to 3914 crores. The EBITDA also rose by about 21% to 818 crores, while the EBITDA margin expanded 230 basis points to 20.9%. Cipla had received a tax credit of about 64 crores in this quarter compared to a tax expense of 128 crores in the year-ago quarter. The company's bottom line, hence, was impacted by a 103% surge in depreciation costs, which stood at 522 crores. And on the back of that, Cipla shares, however, managed to end marginally in the green. Moving on and staying with corporate earnings itself, Eicher Motors' third quarter performance met street estimates. Profit for the auto major grew 24%, while revenues came in at 2269 crores thanks to the strong sales of its Royal Enfield brand of bikes. Operating profit for the company also rose 22% from the previous quarter. The capacity utilization for Eicher's joint venture with Volvo for commercial vehicles is at 100%, and the management is confident of strong volumes going forward. In fact, Eicher also plans to roll out fully electric buses for intra-city travel very soon. And it's the first day of the Delhi Auto Show, biannual event where automakers showcase some of their ambitious projects for the first time. And at a time when the world's going gaga over electric vehicles, how can India be left behind? So almost all 24 automakers have either displayed or revealed plans of developing electric vehicles in the near future. But how concrete are these plans, and will electric motorcycles and cycles be riding on Indian roads over the next 2 years? Well, let's find out from Krishanu Mukherjee.
The theme of the Auto Expo 2018 so far has been electric vehicles. While most companies have unveiled some models, some of them have said that they will soon unveil models or have at least unveiled their plans of unveiling models. The theme has been electric vehicles so far, starting from Maruti Suzuki, which said it's going to launch its first electric vehicle in India by 2020.
Well, as far as the electric vehicle is concerned, we are announced that 2020 will be our first electric vehicle. We are doing a study in the market, trying to understand the customer need, and based on that, we will be making that next step.
Going to Hyundai, which unveiled its first, or actually its only commercial electric vehicle in the world, which is the Ioniq sedan.
Electric mobility has been missing in India, although there have been products which have been introduced, but the price actually kept away. Plus, there were the other challenges in terms of infrastructure and all. So when we look at it, definitely India, if you look at it, the future of mobility is electric.
Then there were companies like Renault which said that they were waiting for more clarity from the government side before unveiling or disclosing their plans of electric vehicles. Now, thus far, the Auto Expo, as always, has seen a lot of unveils. Launches aren't common at Auto Expos. Cars are more often than not unveiled at Auto Expos, and we've been seeing that trend going on, with the key theme being electric vehicles.
These are all most environmentally friendly products, and we have invested in these products, and these are concepts what we have displayed here. The ethanol based and electric will be launched soon.
By when, Baba? You know, a rough timeline.
Next financial year.
See, electric, according to me, is an idea whose time has come. Okay, and going forward, we'll see more of electric. Now, let's examine why electric is not. What are the speed breakers in electric vehicle? I think three, according to me. First is the cost. Cost of battery is high. It is not affordable as of now. Second is range anxiety. People should know how long it can drive, etc. And third is charging infrastructure.
Hero MotoCorp is on the drawing boards. In the R&D, Hero MotoCorp has also gone beyond the drawing board with prototypes. I have personally seen 2 weeks back in the R&D both scooters and motorcycles under development. And of course, there are things that need to be managed: the battery management, the motor, which is all happening.
As an example, we have one from Honda cars lined up right here, and this is an electric sports electric vehicle concept rather, which we don't know when it'll see the light of day, but that is what is happening here at the Auto Expo. Electric vehicle concepts and commercial models have been unveiled and are being unveiled.
Well, meanwhile, in a negative development for miners, the Supreme Court has decided to reject all the iron ore mining renewals that were given by the Goa government. Now, this order, which will impact players like Vedanta, have a big presence in the state, has called for fresh tenders on all 88 mines. Arpan Chaturvedi sums up all the courtroom action in this report.
Subject of challenge in these proceedings were the renewal of licenses that were granted or the leases that were granted in the year 2015 and this NGO called Goa Foundation had challenged these leases that were granted on the grounds that there were procedural irregularities. Mr. Prashant Bhushan was of course arguing for the petitioners and in the judgment that the Supreme Court has come up with today is the court has said that these licenses or these leases were granted in unduly haste, did not take all the relevant material that should have been considered before the leases were renewed, and that it is not in the interest of mineral development. And on those grounds, the judgment basically says that all the renewal leases are stand quashed. The mining cannot continue under these leases that were granted after March 15, 2018. So that will be the last day till when mining can at least continue. Post that, there will be a pause on all the mining activities in Goa until the government grants fresh leases. And of course, they have again made it clear that this time it should not be a renewal, but that a fresh leases should be granted as far as these particular leases which have been cancelled after the Supreme Court's order today.
And it's not surprising to see that shares of Vedanta ended nearly 2% lower on the back of that development. But moving on to politics, Prime Minister Narendra Modi today attacked the Congress party, saying that the country has been suffering due to the wrong policies of the Congress. In his reply to the motion of thanks on President's address in Lok Sabha, Modi said that the bad loan problem has been created by the previous UPA government.
के पापों को देखते हुए, जानते हुए, सबूत होते हुए मैंने मौन रखा मेरे देश की भलाई के लिए। आपके आरोप में सहता रहा देश की भलाई के लिए। लेकिन अब बैंकों को हमने आवश्यक ताकत दी है। अब समय आ गया है कि देश के सामने सत्य आना चाहिए। ये एनपीए आपका पाप था और मैं आज इस पवित्र सदन में खड़ा रह करके कह रहा हूं, मैं लोकतंत्र के मंदिर में खड़ा रह करके कहता हूं, हमारी सरकार आने के बाद एक भी ऐसी लोन हमने नहीं दी है जिसको एनपीए की नौबत आई हो।
And the Prime Minister also spoke on the bifurcation of Andhra Pradesh in the Parliament. Modi said that the new states created during Vajpayee's tenure were done with preparation, while Andhra Pradesh was bifurcated only for political gains and without planning.
चुनाव को ध्यान में रखते हुए हड़बड़ी में संसद के दरवाजे बंद करके सदन ऑर्डर में नहीं था तब भी आंध्र के लोगों की भावनाओं का आदर किए बिना तेलंगाना बनाने के पक्ष में हम भी थे। तेलंगाना आगे बढ़े उसके पक्ष में आज भी हम हैं। लेकिन आंध्र के साथ उस दिन आपने जो बीज बोए, आपने जो चुनाव के लिए हड़बड़ी में किया, ये उसी का नतीजा है कि आज 4 साल के बाद भी समस्याएं सुलझती रहती हैं।
Meanwhile, Rahul Gandhi has responded, saying that the Prime Minister Modi did not answer any of the questions that were put to him in the Parliament. He also said that the Parliament is the place to answer the nation and not make a campaign pitch. Listen.
शायद नरेंद्र मोदी जी भूल गए हैं, वो देश के प्रधानमंत्री हैं, वो विपक्ष के नेता नहीं हैं और उनसे सवाल पूछे जा रहे हैं। राफेल का सवाल पूछा जा रहा है, किसानों के भविष्य का सवाल पूछा जा रहा है, रोजगार का सवाल पूछा जा रहा है, जवाब नहीं दे रहे। तो ठीक है, वो कांग्रेस पार्टी की बात कर रहे हैं, वो ठीक है, उसकी जगह है, मगर ये उसकी जगह नहीं। आप पब्लिक मीटिंग में ये बात करना चाहते हैं, आप करिए, मगर यहां पे आपको देश को जवाब देना है। यहां आपको एक्यूजेशन नहीं लगाने हैं, यहां आपको देश से सवाल नहीं पूछने, यहां आपको देश से जवाब देना है।
SpaceX has successfully launched the Falcon Heavy rocket in its maiden test. Now, as a test cargo, Falcon sent a cherry red Tesla Roadster sports car outfitted with cameras to capture the views as it orbits around the sun. The successful rocket launch was matched by a simultaneous safe landing of the twin reusable boosters. Take a look. Coming back to the Auto Expo in New Delhi, Maruti Suzuki's chairman R.C. Bhargava says that policy implementation on the ground needs to improve. Speaking to Bloomberg Quint's Krishanu Mukherjee, Bhargava also says that along with an electric push, companies must also focus on reducing emissions from internal combustion engines. Listen in.
Let the policy be worked upon. I think a lot of people have to do a lot of work to make a reasonable policy.
And you would also be
we will also
about
have
that.
to work. We are also working, as I think somebody mentioned, Maruti is also doing a consumer survey, because amongst the policy objectives is to find out what the customer behavior is, what the customer reality is. We don't know. If I was to ask you how many people can charge their cars at home, do you know? Does any policy maker know? How do you make policy then? With this basic knowledge not available, how do you make policy? But we have had a lot of very learned people expounding on electric cars and doing things.
Reducing fossil fuel consumption and all. Fossil fuel reduction of fossil, working on reduction.
Reduction of fossil fuel is an objective which must be attained. Reduction of emission, whether it's carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, all of those must be attained. Any technology which helps is good, including electric propulsion.
So also, have you had any word with the government on the scrappage policy? Considering you said something needs to be done with the older cars also. Have you had any word with the government on that? What needs to be done with the older cars?
Before you start scrapping policy, how about implementing the vehicle fitness policy?
Right.
Fitness तो आप कर नहीं पाते हो. पहले fitness तो करो.
No, but sir, have you sent any other things on fitness?
I have not.
To
I have not.
In terms of fitness also?
Because it doesn't make sense to me. If I maintain a car well and you don't, but your car is newer than mine, what is the logic of scrapping my car and not your car?
Fair enough, sir, but have you passed this argument to the government, this plea to the government?
People understand.
But the government isn't doing anything on these lines of a blanket ban on BS3 cars.
I say, our ability to implement laws needs to become better. Implement anything needs to become better everywhere. You look at anything which we do, by we means any governmental agency, and I'm not talking of central government. Largely it's all state government. How good is their implementation capability? Look at anything which the state government does. That's the problem.
And with that, it's a wrap on this show. I hope we help you catch up on all that you missed through the day. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Bloomberg Quint Live.